Hi, my name is Sky, and I am a grateful member of our team. I'm not actually a teenager. I'm 11, and I'm going into middle school this fall. I'd like to thank Leanne and the Summerfest committee for asking me to speak for Alateen and for all the really cool gifts. And yes, I like my name, even though people are always asking me what's up. I'd also like to thank my dad for helping me prepare for this project. I'm here because I have family members who are alcoholics. Some of you probably have the same problem. I'm also here because I like recovery. I like it well enough to be in front of all you people, even though it can get scary at times. My dad is in recovery. He's been in recovery for 23 years. My mom is not in recovery. They have joint custody. I choose to spend most of the time with my dad. Do the math. I like recovery. I love recovery. The only other option is staying sick. More about that later. Let me tell you about my family. I have 4 half-sisters, 1 stepsister, 3 half-brothers, and 1 stepbrother, and that equals 9. Whew! I also have a stepdad, no stepmom, so counting parents and me, 3 grandparents, 1 aunt, my family total is about 17. I also have a cute 2-year-old tiger cat. His name is, Tiger. My favorite hobby is basketball. I want to be the point guard for the Phoenix Suns. My favorite books are Because of Winn-Dixie, Zits, and Peanuts. But enough of the fun stuff. Let's get cereal. Most of these family members and some friends have noticed from time to time that I can have a pissy attitude. Can you believe it? When this happens at my mom's house, everything has to be done her way, no exceptions. Several times she ran the whole family out of the house, and we had to go live at her grandma's place. That was not much fun. When my dad got upset about my pissy attitude, he said, "You're going to 3 Alateen meetings, and if you don't like it, well, we'll talk again." So I went to Alateen. In my first Alateen meeting, the people understood my problem. I've never felt that bond of trust before. After the meeting, I ran outside, gave my dad a big hug, saying, "I want to come back again next week." That was at the Wednesday night Alateen group, and I've been coming ever since. Some of the members of my Alateen group are here today to support me. Thank you very much for coming. Remember earlier when I said my 2 choices were recovery or sickness? I like recovery, but sickness is always an option. Alcoholism without recovery seems to me to be a whole lot like sickness. 2 weeks ago, I learned something about sickness. Do you folks know the F word? My F word was the flu. The intestinal flu. I get sick just thinking about it. I even learned how to spell the word diarrhea. Can you spell diarrhea? I couldn't cause it. I couldn't control it. I couldn't cure it. I was powerless. It's kind of just like alcoholism, in other ways too. I needed help from a power greater than myself. I needed help to restore me to anything like sanity. Only when my dad told me he had no more rabbits left in his hat, and that's when I realized neither did I. I surrendered. I went to bed and slept for 4 hours. Then I felt better, much better. My recovery had started, just like when I first went to Alateen. My recovery had started, so you see, alcoholism and the flu are both a big sickness, and recovery from both have some similarities. Step 1, powerless, unmanageable. It's easier, perhaps, with diarrhea to see a manageability, almost impossible to miss, right? Step 2, I need help in order to feel better. Okay? I have been going to AA meetings since I was a babe in arms. I still go once or twice a week. One of my AA friends told me that they used to take turns holding me. That's how cute I was and am. Can we see a show of hands for anyone at their first Summerfest, even Alateens? At my first Summerfest, I got a name tag that said Sky S, 100 days clean and sober. This is my 11th Summerfest. Alateen is wonderful. It's for us kids. At my Alateen group, we share goods and bads and rate our week from 1 to 10. Our sponsor always asks us, what alcoholic in your life has been most challenging this week? The alcoholic in my life is usually my mother. Since joining Alateen, I have found that I can call on my higher power, especially when I'm afraid or when I can't sleep. I say, Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I say it several times, and I always get relief. When I read in my Living Today in Alateen book, April 7th, my birthday, I read about a girl who had problems with her mom, perhaps even more than I do. It says, by listening to others share and comparing their experiences with my own, I learned what was really going on. I accept that my mom has the disease of alcoholism and that it affected my life too. At the bottom of each page, there is a section called Things to Think About. It says, if we try to make each day a good day, we will be paving the way for a good future and will have a lot of good memories when our todays have become yesterdays. I like that reading. I would also like to thank you guys. You've been a wonderful audience. And I would like it if you help me close my Alateen talk, the same way we close our Alateen meetings. You are welcome to join in the part you know. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
We should have her back in 5 years. Okay, so this is the good part for me. No offense. So when I took this position as the Al-Anon co-chair for this year, one of my jobs was to find the Saturday afternoon speaker, and so I went to Timar and I got a big stack of CDs, and I probably went through like 6 or 7, and I just wasn't hearing what I was relating to, and I was only giving each one like 5 minutes. I'm very impatient. And then I put on this next disc, and Cheryl said something that spoke to me. She mentioned using the Big Book in her Al-Anon program, and I'm a Big Book Al-Anon, and that's where I find the instructions for the steps, and I don't want to be controversial, but it speaks to me. And so I called Cheryl and I invited her, and I got to have some time to visit with her last night, and I'm just really looking forward to this because she has things that I want, grace and dignity, and she listens really well, and I talk too much. And I was supposed to be getting to know her, and it seemed more like she was getting to know me. So anyway, I would like you to welcome Cheryl F.
I just love looking out and seeing all the faces I know and the faces I'm meeting for the first time. This is why I keep coming back, because I found out you never do anything alone in Al-Anon. And I was so frightened when I came to Al-Anon. I was terrified. And I had all of my walls up. And one by one, you helped me learn how to let them down. So I'm just going to take a deep breath and say I'm a very grateful member of Al-Anon, and my name is Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
I want to thank the committee for asking me, for Alexa, my new friend Alexa, and my handler, Jill. Between Alexa and Jill, I've always felt the eye on me wherever I'm going. And Barbara told me from speaking here last year, she said, they will just treat you like a queen. You don't have to worry about anything. They will take care of everything. And I wasn't quite sure what she meant. And by this morning, I knew, because every time I turned around with a question, there was Alexa or there was Jill. And it's like, well, this is no mistake. And they're like, and I know they're just kind of making sure everything's good, but in such a positive, loving way. So thank you so much for your support. What it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I was born in 1947 in Hillsboro, Oregon. I'm the youngest of 4 children and the only girl. And so I had to find my power and my space in my family, because testosterone ruled our house. And my father was a rageaholic. I was never hit. My mother said we never had to hit you. And that was the truth of it, because my life was pretty much ruled by fear. I can remember being as young as 5 and thinking to myself, why are they asking these questions? Why are they doing these things? Why are they saying what they're saying? It just seemed odd to me, even at that time. And I remember something clicked about then that said, you have to survive this. So I just kind of put me away. And as I developed as a human being in my family of origin, as I would begin to emerge, and I was told that, why do you think that? Why do you feel that way? You shouldn't act that way. I found in order to survive, I had to put that piece away, and that piece away, and the next piece away. And what I could do for survival, which I am grateful for today, is to learn their way and learn the rules of their system. And I did that pretty well. And when I grew up and got out on my own, I met a young man, and we had a passionate affair and affection for each other, and he hit me once, and I tried to run him over with the car, and I thought, boy, this is love, you know. He must care a lot, and maybe this must be what it's like, because that's what my mom and dad did. They fought all the time. There was only one act of physical violence that it happened before I was born, but I heard about it for all the years afterwards, about my father striking my mother once. And, of course, it was always brought up at opportune times when she needed the power and she needed to try and control him with guilt and shame. The rest of the time, they either didn't speak or they were screaming and yelling at each other. And not much anymore, but occasionally I can still hear those voices in my head. If I get frightened or overwrought, they'll come up again and I can hear them, like I did when I was laying in the bedroom. So that's kind of where I came from. I believe my drive was to find men who were similar to my father, but make it work this time. And I found out that there are rageaholics who dwell within alcoholics and addicts and psychotic people. And so I just went out and found a bunch. And and it was the 60s. You know, I graduated in 65, so I won't say I dated, but there were the 60s, and and I met a lot of people. And when I was about 21, I went to stay with a friend in St. Helens, and she and her husband took me to the local tavern. And there he was. And you've heard these words before. He was tall, dark, and handsome with a sparkle in his eye. And I just fell hard for him. And I asked my friend about him, and she said, oh, he's social, and he's easy to get along with, and he's wonderful. And so she introduced us, and that night, apparently, I went home with him because I woke up in his bed the next morning. And I didn't think much about it. It had happened before to me. That was the level of my social skills at that time. Hi, your place or mine? What did surprise me, however, is when I got up to go to the bathroom and his mother and father were out there. I didn't know he lived at home. And he didn't tell me. He had gone to work and left me with these people I didn't know. So I got to know his folks, and the first thing his mother said to me is, you must be special. He's never brought one home before. And you know what? I felt special. And she managed to talk. We talked for the next 8 hours till he came home. And what I remember her saying to me is, if he just finds the right woman, he'll quit drinking and running around, and he'll be a great husband. Well, at 21, with my background, it was like hearing the fire bell go off. And we were married later in the year, and I was pretty focused on being the one to change him. And my father had died a couple years previously, so I had my great uncle walk me down the aisle. And I won't say that I had no insight. However, in the room, in the bride's room before the ceremony, my mom said, look, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. You know, we can leave. And I just looked at her like she was crazy. And I said, well, of course I want to do this. We're going to be just fine. And walking down the aisle for like 6 seconds from the front of my great uncle saying, if you want me to walk you to your car, just tell me. I'll drive you home. And I'm thinking, how rude. This is not supportive. So I went and got married and started in trying to make him better so my life would be better, to improve his quality of life so he would love me, and then we'd just be blissfully happy. And I must say that my now ex-husband was a delightful man. He never got angry. He was not abusive. He just drank. And he drank every day, and he worked at a mill where he was on rotating shifts. And so his drinking would occur at all hours of the day and night, depending on the shift he was working that day. We hadn't been married for 6 months that 2 of the 4 children from his previous marriage came to live with us. That was not in my plans. I wanted to be the queen and the one who had all the say and got all the attention, and these 2 little boys came to live with us. And I was an awful stepmother. I was awful because I didn't want them there. They didn't mind either. And they were children, and I didn't know about children. I just knew how I had been treated as a child. And none of that worked on them either. The yelling and the guilt and the blaming and the shaming, none of that worked. All it did was make us all sicker. So after about 2.5 years, I sat down with my husband and I said, because I'm very well organized, I said, I have 2 lists here. This is our property split into 2 equal halves, and I'll bet it was. And I said, just choose one. I don't care which. And he looked at me and he said, I'm so glad you've done this. I don't think I could have gone through this another day. And I thought, like he's the victim here? Well, he was. I called that man names. I did everything I could to try and get him to hear me and do what I wanted. I shamed him. I blamed him. I called work to make sure he was there. I called the bar to tell him to get home. I followed him to the bar. I did all the don'ts that we have in our do's and don'ts. And after 3 years, mercifully, I gave up, and I felt like a complete failure. because I was going to make that work. Well, then I was out on my own one more time, and I thought, it's just me. I just can't quite get that secret formula figured out if I just knew how to do this right. And the next one I met was just crazy. He didn't use or drink. He was just crazy. And he liked to control as much or more than I did, but he was more physically serious about it. And I was beaten and almost killed one night. And when I think about it now, the interesting part of that to me is that when I kind of came to consciousness and he was still there, I told him I was sorry. And I remember doing that and later on thinking, what was that about? And it was about two things. It was about me feeling like a failure, like I was responsible for the whole event that happened, and it was survival. If I could get him to believe it was my fault, like he didn't already, then maybe he'd leave me alone. Maybe he wouldn't kill me this time. So I ended that, and I dated some other men here and there, but nothing really worked for me. I dated one man for almost 8 years, and I took it slow, and I held myself back, and then about year 7, I said to him, you know what I'd like to do? Because for 7 years, I had done what he wanted to do. Was it his fault? No. Because he would always say, what do you want to do? I'd say, I don't care, whatever makes you happy. So for 7 years, that was the answer he got. And that seemed to work well. And about year 7, I said to him, I would really like to. And he looked at me and said, I don't want to do that. And my heart just dropped. And I thought, I'm done. I am done trying this. Obviously, I have no right in this world. Obviously, I have no right in this world to have anything good come into my life. So that ended. Excuse me. And I had met someone in work that had been separated from his wife, and we began to see each other. And he had been clean and sober in AA for about 3.5 years. And I didn't know much about Alcoholics Anonymous. I had seen a black and white movie on it, it was made in the 50s. I don't know what it was. I didn't know what Al-Anon was at all. I thought it was a Jewish organization. I don't know why. And this is honest to God. I hear about people having blackouts, the drinkers. I had blackouts of whole years of my life and pieces of information that didn't come to me for long periods of time. And once I got into AA, something got stuck in my head that it was Alcoholics Anonymous of America. So when I drive around and see these AAA signs on the back of cars, I thought everybody who had one was an alcoholic, an Alcoholic Anonymous of America. And the guy I was going with, I told him, I said, it's amazing how many of you there are out there. And I told him, and he just did the and explained to me that was not Alcoholics Anonymous. What I did for 8 months is go with this man to AA meetings, to open AA meetings, to a lot of speaker meetings, and he gave me the big book of AA. And the first 5 chapters, was life-altering to me. And I was really pretty good. I was handling it good until I hit chapter 5. And the walls came tumbling down, like the song says. And I was emotionally and spiritually wrecked at that point. I was empty and I was done. And I've found out in years since how strong we are, because we go through horrendous things and we just take the next step. But I had quit taking the next step. And I said to myself, I can't do this once more. This is my 5th nervous breakdown of my life. I'm in my mid to late 20s. My oldest brother, his youngest daughter, had come to live with me. And she was a teenager. And And we just kind of were doing life together. We'd sit and we'd watch television, and we'd talk to the people on television and tell them how stupid they were. And, we're smoking pot together, and we're doing what we need to do. And I hit my bottom. And I curled up on my couch, and I stopped eating, and I stopped drinking, and I said, I'm done. I'm just done. And I didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to stop. I couldn't do that pain, that level of pain one more day. I couldn't do it. And my niece did everything she could to help encourage me and take care of me, but, I'm pretty strong-willed, pretty strong-minded. And so God, having this wonderful sense of humor, sent over the only person in my life who can get my attention, my mother. She knows every button I've got. And she came over with this little package in her hand. And I don't know if she'd been talking to Kim or how she knew, but my mom knew. And she sat down and she said, listen, you have two choices. I'm going to mix up this protein powder and you're going to drink it, or I'm sending you to the hospital. And here's the big button. And they will put big needles into you to feed you intravenously. And I just felt myself coming back to attention. And I said, well, what kind of powder is that? She said, you don't care. And she went in and fixed it, and I drank it. But while she's fixing the powder, I'm having this conversation with the God of my understanding in my head and my heart. And I said, look, dying doesn't scare me. Living scares me. If I'm going to do this, I have got to change everything in my life that is not working for me, and I cannot do this. I don't know how. My best thinking got me here, dying on a couch, emaciated. I said, so if I'm going to stay around, you got to fix this. And before that moment, my God was the old man on the throne. He didn't have his back turned to me, but when he looked at me, he'd just shake his head and go, Cheryl, you're just a poor, sorry thing. So at the moment I spoke with my God, I had to start revising the way that I thought about him. I needed a new God in my life. And I got one. And I continue to go to AA and Al-Anon meetings and hear the courage and hear the miracles. And it's the one reason I love to hear the AA stories, whether it's in a meeting or from a podium, because you people are walking miracles. A lot of you just shouldn't even be drawing the next breath. And if there was not a power greater than ourselves, most of us, I think, probably would not be here. And if we were here, we'd be in a lot sorrier state. And I love hearing about it. I loved our speaker last night. And I studied the big book of AA. And when I read the promises in chapter 5, I remember saying to myself, if I could have just one of those things in the rest of my life, I could die happy. And my God has this wonderful sense of humor to where when I say silly things like that, it's like a done deal, it's a contract. So I was on the road again. And 8 months later, after going to a lot of AA meetings where wonderful people would say to me, so how long have you been drinking? I said, I'm here with him. And someone would gently say to me, there's this meeting down the hall. And then they'd say the thing that scared me the most, and they'll understand you. I'm not going in there to anyone who understands who I am, because if they know who I am, they'll throw me away, just like everyone else has. The minute I began to be who I was, I'd be thrown away. Through the love and the grace of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I began to gain some spiritual courage. And as much as it means to me, there was an element missing for me in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know what it was, but it was just a little piece that just wasn't being touched. So I called AIS and I said to my God, listen, I'm not driving all over to go to one of these meetings. I can just keep going to AA meetings all the time. And I got some wonderful woman on the phone, and she said, there's a meeting 3 blocks from where you live. No. She says, I think it's meeting tonight, too. It's like, so it's the middle of summer, and not the middle of summer, it's the end of May, actually, but it was awfully hot. It was hot May, and I put on my woolen suit because I had been emaciated and weighed not much, and I went down to my first Al-Anon meeting, and it was in a house that had been converted, and there was an AA meeting and an Alateen meeting and an Al-Anon meeting, and I got there a little bit early, and I went in and sat down, and women came in and were sitting up chairs and laughing and talking, and what you been doing? And I thought, oh my God, this is an auxiliary. Oh. And I thought, I'll just go next door to AA where I know how it's going to work. But because I was so sick and codependent, once they'd seen me, I couldn't move. That would have been embarrassing. So I sat and I listened for an hour and a half with my arms crossed and my legs crossed and not saying a word to anybody. And at the last, the chairperson, does the newcomer have anything that she'd like to say? I went, oh. And this woman to my left, she was crazy too. She put her arm around me and she said, that's okay, honey. You just keep coming back and we'll love you till you learn to love yourself. She was nuts as far as I was concerned. The thing that struck me when I walked out of that meeting is I can't tell you a full sentence that I remembered hearing being read or anyone saying, but they knew who I was. And they weren't talking about me. And I'd never heard people talk about it. I'd never heard people talk about the volcano and the shame and the guilt and the not enough and the not belonging and the isolation. I'd never heard people say those words out loud. The first time I heard someone get really enraged in an Al-Anon meeting, I just grabbed hold of my chair because I knew somebody was going to get up and just slap her and throw her out the meeting and say, we don't do that here. Because that's how it was in my house growing up. But nobody did anything. The next person shared and didn't refer to her or anything. And I just couldn't hardly breathe watching that. I started early in service work because I didn't know I could say no. And the long-timers are so helpful. Why don't you come a little early next time, Cheryl, and help us set up the chairs? Oh, would you mind setting up the literature? And we'd have our business meeting. Oh, I think Cheryl would like to be the group sec. Wouldn't you like that, Cheryl? Okay. And I did whatever they told me to do. The only thing I would not do is stay after the meeting. I've heard people say they thought I was a magician because the minute that meeting was over, they'd turn around to talk to me and I was out that door. I could do it in the meeting. I could listen in the meeting. I could share in the meeting. I couldn't have you get closer than that to me. I couldn't do it. I wasn't ready yet. So one of the things that I did in service that was the most fun, and I want to thank Sky for coming up and sharing, what a delight, is that I was an Alateen sponsor for 8 years, and I didn't want that either. I thought those kids were just nuts, and I didn't want anything to do with them. And my sponsor was the Alateen sponsor, and she got deathly ill. And she called me and said, I can't do it. I just can't get out of bed. Will you please take it? Just for tonight, she said. Just for tonight. And I went in and sat down, and 8 years later, I walked out of those because I knew it was time for me to turn it over. Can I see the hands of people who have been Alateen sponsors, please? I think this is a very special part of service, and I know that I did work in those rooms with those kids that I never could have done anyplace else. It's not that I poured myself out. Oh, when I was a child, I didn't do that. That's what my sponsor was for. What I got to do is listen and participate in a healing process with those children by just sitting there and acknowledging their realities. I did so much healing on such a deep level during those 8 years. I cannot begin to tell you. I got up to alternate DR on the area level, and I was at AIS for I don't know how many years doing different positions. It was so much fun being there, meeting everyone, and watching God work, watching God run a business. Unbelievable, unbelievable. And I was on the Reflections Committee, which is a speakers meeting in Portland. That was the most fun I ever had. It was like a party 2 nights a month, and it was just wonderful. And slowly, very gently and very slowly, I began to open up parts of me, and I began to trust I can show you this much of this part and this much of this part. But I would do it at my own pace and rate. You spoke gently and quietly and lovingly to me, and you listened. And I think for all of us, that is one of the things I've noticed and I've heard this weekend. I just wanted to be heard. And when people listened, I was afraid to tell them because speaking before had been dangerous for me. And I learned how to speak my truth. And that's all I got to tell was my truth. I got to take what I learned in this fellowship and take it to work with me and watch it work in a corporate atmosphere, which amazed some people, amused others, and darn right frightened a few. I got pretty excited about Al-Anon after I'd been in a few years, and at work I was in this one building, and honest to God, there were people who saw me coming down the halls that would just cut off. Here she comes. And off the... I should have just had a soapbox just chained to me because I wanted everybody to have what I was getting in these rooms. It was a miracle every day of my life, and even though the voices were still screaming in my head, run as fast as you can, I didn't. What I would do is go to a meeting, read the literature. It took me a year and a half to make my first phone call to anyone because why would they want to hear my problems? And I didn't start sponsoring for a while because God knows I didn't know anything to tell anyone, even though I really was tempted to control them. So I just kind of did my program, lots and lots of service work. That was good for me because I'm not one to be idle. If I'm not given something to do, I will think of something, and my best thinking got me to Al-Anon. So I stayed busy, and slowly but surely, over time, I found out who I was. I'm still working on not being a human doing, but a human being. I think I will probably work on that the rest of my life. I need to be kept busy. This is a real special weekend to me because a couple of years ago, my family has gotten together and gone down the 4th of July parade for a long time. I live like a half a block from it in Hillsboro. And for whatever reason, this one year everybody had made other plans, and I didn't know if I wanted to go down by myself. So just the evening before, God is good, and I got a call from an Al-Anon friend, and she said, my plans kind of fell through. I'm going to come with you. I said, great. We saw the parade. We went home. We sat down to talk about what we were going to eat, and my phone rang. And it was the youngest of my 3 older brothers, and he said, I want you to hold on. This is bad news. He said, our brother Jimmy was found dead today. Jimmy was 6 years older than I am. And he was a wonderful brother. He was wonderful. He enjoyed life. He tried to find the best in everything and everyone. And he was an alcoholic by his own admission. And for years, when he would call me, sometimes drunk, we would talk and thank God for this program. And I said to him once, many years ago, when I was new in my program, because I heard it, I'll never badger you. I will walk with you. I will go wherever you need to go to get help. But I'm not dragging you and I'm not pushing you. It's your life and it's your decision. So I just listened to him. And he'd call and he'd talk and ramble on. And I'd tell him I loved him and he'd tell me he loved me. And we'd hang up and I'd cry. Because it's no fun watching somebody you love die day by day. It's hard. So my other 2 surviving brothers and I went into Jim's house, and just a day or so, I think it was probably the next day. And my brother Jim had a housemaid, and they kept the house immaculate. There was an upstairs and then a downstairs that had been converted into 3 bedrooms down there. And you better use a coaster when you were at Jimmy's, or you would hear about it because it needed to be neat and clean. And my brother Jimmy gave me a lot of gifts in his time on this earth. He taught me to dance, and he taught me how to love people unconditionally. And he really helped me understand that no matter who you're talking to or what their story is, they're human beings. And you just accept them on that level, because that's how he accepted me. He never said a word about what I was doing, whether it was right or wrong. He just loved me. He had a heart attack, and instead of using the phone upstairs, he tried to make his way downstairs, and he made it to his bedroom, and that's where he hit the floor, and that's where he was gone. And they think it happened on the 2nd, and they found him on the 4th. A good friend of his did. And his roommate, Joe, had told me for years that Jimmy would never let them into his bedroom. This is like 20 years. And Joe kept saying, well, why don't you just let me in there? I'm, taking the trash out. And Jimmy would never let him in. Well, Joe was recovering in Alcoholics Anonymous for, I think, 6 or 8 years at the time of Jimmy's death, maybe longer. And he had moved out of the home to go live and do other things, and he called and he talked to us, and he said, he was in tears. He says, I know when I leave that Jimmy will drink himself to death. And that's pretty much what happened. And I said to him, if that's not your business, that's between Jimmy and the God of his understanding. So we went into the room. We went into the bedroom. And my brother gave me another tremendous gift. I'd heard for a long time, for 19 years, I've been going in these rooms and hearing the AAs, reading the big book and listening to Al-Anons and hearing about how it's a disease and how, it isn't about willpower. And someplace back here it was saying, if they really wanted to, if they really wanted to quit drinking, they could. That was alive and well back there. So my other brother stayed upstairs. I said, I need to go see where my brother died. And I went downstairs and I walked into the bedroom. And it's where the alcoholic lived. And I'd never seen this part of my brother. And the mattress was old. My brothers had pulled the linens off. And the mattress had holes, and it had urine stains and burns, and it was so broken down. Because after a while, he was too ashamed to change it out and bring another one down. So he just left it there and kept piling blankets on it. There was mold on the carpeting, stuff. We couldn't even tell what it was. And he would binge drink. And there was a pail of urine that I carried out because he'd never leave the room when he'd be binge drinking. And it was hard. But you know what? I don't think it's a matter of willpower. There is nobody on this earth who wakes up and says, I want to live part of my life like this. Nobody does. And I wept, and my other brothers came down, and they too had always said, why doesn't he get help? What's wrong with him? And I looked at them and I said, this is what's real. This is what alcoholism looks like, and this is what it does to people untreated. What a great gift my brother Jimmy gave me, to be able to see this and to know the truth about the disease of alcoholism. And it softened me, and it changed me. And one of the great challenges that I'm dealing with now, a great challenge in my heart, is that I have a mother who should be 91 years old this year. And we have her in assisted living. And most days, she's not sure who she's talking to, and she's in that altered reality that people with dementia and Alzheimer's get to. And when she began to have these changes about 6 or 7 years ago, I got angry because I didn't want my mom to be like that. My mom was supposed to stay here and take care of me and always be here for me. Well, I now had an opportunity to be here for my mother. And because of my brother's death and the compassion that it brought into my heart, I've been able to be with my mother and to move through that anger to acceptance and to compassion and to gentleness to help her with her transition right now. And I can usually spend about 2 hours with her. And when I leave, I usually go out to my car and I cry a little bit because you lose them a little bit at a time, just like an active alcoholic. And it's hard, and she can't do anything about it. And I'm glad I've got the time with her, and I'm going to be glad when her transition is over for her and for me, because it hurts. And I need you to hear that without the programs of Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon, there is no way in this world I could stand before you today and talk to you about these things and tell you that they are miracles in my life. They are blessings. They are things I have total gratitude for because I don't believe they're a mistake. I don't believe they're punishment. I believe they are given to me when I'm ready for them to move me along my journey. And this is where my journey brings me to today. I have been treated like a queen here today. And part of that is because inside me, I'm beginning to feel like that queen, like the person who deserves to be treated well and who can accept love or accept criticism and know that everybody's got an opinion. So I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank you for your time and attention, and I'll see you later today.